The 2021 Annual Shareholders Meeting of Robinsons Retail Holdings Incorporated will now start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will now play the Philippine National Anthem.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this meeting. May I request the Corporate Secretary to please certify on the sending of notices to the shareholders and to the existence of a quorum for this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I hereby certify that notice of this meeting had been sent to the shareholders of record as of April 7, 2021 through the following methods. By publication in the Manila Standard and the Business Mirror for 2 consecutive days in both print and online formats. By posting on the website of the corporation and by disclosure to the Philippine Stock Exchange. Thus, the shareholders have been notified of this meeting in compliance with applicable rules and regulations. I hereby certify that there are present in this meeting, via remote communication or by proxy, shareholders entitled to vote representing 83.78% of the corporation's total outstanding shares, and that this meeting is therefore competent to transact the business provided for in the agenda. A quorum is present, Mr. Chairman.
There being a quorum, the annual meeting of the shareholders of Robinsons Retail Holdings is hereby called to order. May I request the Corporate Secretary to share with us the rules and procedures for this meeting.
The rules and procedures are set forth in the definitive information statement. All tabulation results for this meeting are subject to validation by SISIP Gores Vilayo and Company. For the information of the shareholders who are with us now during this live broadcast, the corporation has requested shareholders to send their questions or comments by email, and questions which were received by May 3, 2021 have been collated and selected questions will be answered later on. The corporation will reply to the questions and comments not taken up during this meeting through email.
Let us now proceed to the next item in the agenda, the approval of the minutes of the 2020 Annual Meeting of Shareholders. May I call on the Corporate Secretary to present the results of voting for this agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, copies of the minutes have been distributed to the shareholders by providing the link to the said minutes in the information statement, by making a copy of the minutes available in RRHI's website, and by showing the QR code on the screen prior to the meeting. The minutes have been approved as submitted by votes representing 83.67% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation.
Thank you. The minutes are hereby approved as presented. Moving on to the next item in the agenda, may I now call on Ms. Robina Gokongwei-Pe, President and Chief Executive of the Corporation, to present her report together with the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Madam President.
Good morning to all our shareholders, board of directors, partners, customers, and friends from media. Today, I will tell the story of Robinsons Retail of 2020. From what was supposed to be one of the most promising years for economic growth, 2020 was marked by the emergence of a pandemic with COVID-19. We underwent a global recession and felt the pandemic's profound effects in the Philippines as GDP fell by negative 9.5%. COVID-19 drastically changed the business environment with varying effects to our formats, and the different levels of quarantine imposed by the government restricted face-to-face service at our stores. During ECQ on March 17 to May 16, non-essential formats were closed while the essentials were open, but were operating on shortened hours due to government-imposed curfews. At the end of 2020, we reported net sales of 151.1 billion, recovering 93% of our 2019 net sales. Consolidated same-store sales growth was at negative 8.9% versus positive 3.4% last year, and net income attributable to the parent company dropped by 17.9% year-on-year. In the first quarter of 2021, net sales dropped by 11.1%, and same-store sales growth was at negative 16.1%, given the high base of essential formats, supermarkets, and drugstores, which was driven by panic buying in the first quarter of 2020. RRHI as of end March 2021 consisted of 2,146 stores comprising of 268 supermarkets, 49 department stores, 225 DIY stores, 463 convenience stores, 838 drug stores, and 303 specialty stores, including the 2,051 franchise stores of TGP. The group's store network totaled 4,197 stores. Nonetheless, our operations continued to generate and distribute economic value to society. In 2020, payments to suppliers and other operating costs constituted to over 80.3% of direct economic value generated at 121 billion. We paid 2.1 billion in dividends to stockholders and interest payments to loan providers, and 9.2 billion in employee wages and benefits. From this perspective of creating societal value, as part of our ongoing journey on sustainability, we look towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as one of the frameworks to understand our impact. In 2020, we directly employed over 18,000 individuals from various backgrounds, with 70% of our workforce composed of women. Through our diverse portfolio, we positively impact lives through providing access to essential products and services as well as economic empowerment. The events of 2020 made it more apparent that sustainability, especially the aspect of social involvement, is also becoming part of the new normal in understanding the narrative of corporations. To impart our own narrative, we are publishing a combined 2020 annual and sustainability report. Entitled Salute to Frontliners, we crafted the report in homage to our brave frontline employees in our stores, distribution centers, and headquarters, and their valuable contributions to outstanding customer service and our continued operations. incremental COVID-related expenses for running the stores, incentive pays, shuttle and lodging expenses of our people, store disinfection charges, etc., amounted to about 340 million last year. We put into action our business continuity plans to protect our employees. For our BCP, we implemented health and safety measures for employees, operated with a skeleton workforce in on-site operations, work from home scheme for employees in support services. We likewise inform employees about the Gokongwei Group COVID Care Hotline so they may seek consultation on the virus in partnership with medical services provider Reliance United. Through COVID Care, over 2,600 employees were able to consult medical professionals for their health concerns in the light of the pandemic. Together with the rest of the Gokongwei Group of companies, we launched COVID Protect, our group-wide vaccination program. It is in support of the government's national immunization program for COVID-19. RRHI ordered 67,000 doses of AstraZeneca, Novavax, and Moderna, spending around 80 million for the endeavor. We are happy to note that our efforts to protect our people and build relationships was recognized by our employees. RRHI was also selected as one of the world's best employers by Forbes last July 2020, ranking the highest among the 3 Philippine companies in the list. We are likewise happy to announce that Robinsons Retail's Chief Financial Officer Mylene Casiban was selected as the 14th ING Finex CFO of the Year for 2020. This award is the Philippines' longest-running and only search that honors outstanding chief financial officers. We also find different ways to use our platform and supply chain to create shared prosperity with our suppliers, a number of whom are small and medium enterprises and some from the agricultural sector. Robinsons Supermarkets Farm-to-Table project engages close to 600 smallhold farmers, offering stable demand for fresh produce at fair market prices. The project also empowers and encourages farmers to adopt sustainable farming practices. Robinsons Department Store's Tindahan in Robinsons Galleria proudly showcases locally crafted goods. Lastly, doing our part in COVID mitigation efforts, we supported medical frontliners through donations of food packs and PPEs, working closely with the Gokongwei Brothers Foundation. As a retailer, the pandemic entailed pursuing forward-looking strategies and innovation in how we sell to our customers and how we intend to be their retailer of choice for years to come. In this light, I will now be presenting how we strategically embraced agile opportunities in data and technology. An essential component in serving the omni-channel consumer is focusing in our e-commerce investments. Our e-commerce results saw significant growth in sales, going 3 times year-on-year from 2019 and 7 times year-on-year in the first quarter of 2021. We launched our e-commerce platform Go Robinsons in June 2020, capitalizing on the shift in buyer preferences towards online marketplaces. Go Robinsons is envisioned to be the main online hub for all our formats and has already onboarded 7 of our banners. Our drugstores and appliances segments also have their own e-commerce websites. We plan to onboard these banners into the Go Robinsons platform soon, but they will still maintain their own e-commerce websites. Robinsons Supermarket also invested in a convertible note issued by Grocery Incorporated, equivalent to 28.6% of the company upon conversion. An avenue for inclusive growth Grocery is the Philippines' first tech startup which provides B2B grocery delivery services to over 20,000 sari-sari stores through a mobile app. Merchandise is sourced from various branches of Robinsons Supermarket. In 2020, it recorded net sales of 1.57 billion versus 972 million last year. We are also constantly on the lookout for M&As. On October 30, 2020, RRHI reached an agreement to acquire Rose Pharmacy from Dairy Farm International Holdings. This is our second partnership with Dairy Farm after our acquisition of Rustan Supercenters in 2018. Rose Pharmacy is one of the leading drugstore chains in the Philippines, with annual sales of 9 billion in 2019 and over 300 stores in the Visayas and Mindanao. As part of our continuing effort to increase shareholder value, we have extended the share buyback program for an additional 2 billion, which brings the total amount for repurchase to 4 billion pesos. The Board of Directors also approved regular cash dividend of 83 centavos per share and a special cash dividend of 1 peso per share. The total cash dividend of 1 peso and 83 centavos per share is equivalent to nearly 90% of last year's net income attributable to the parent company. In leadership and development, we welcome 2 new independent directors to the board in 2020, aligned with global best practices in governance. We welcomed Rodolfo Ang and Cirilo Noel, joining Antonio Go and Roberto Romulo as independent directors. Today, we now have 4 independent directors on a board of 9 members or 44% of total versus regional minimum requirement of 30% and SEC's requirement of 20% only. In summary, as a group, we look to further grow the business through the following key imperatives. First, to continue to grow our offline network. Second, accelerate e-commerce presence by pushing the growth of Go Robinsons. Third is to continue to be on the lookout for M&As. That ends my presentation, and once again, good morning to all of you. Keep safe and healthy, and as usual, happy shopping.
Thank you. May I call on the Corporate Secretary to present the results of voting for the approval of the audited financial statements for the preceding fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, we are pleased to report that shareholders representing 83.77% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation have approved the audited financial statements of the corporation for the year ended December 31, 2020, as presented. The report of the President is hereby also duly noted.
The report of the President is accordingly noted, and the audited financial statements for the preceding fiscal year are hereby approved as presented. We now go to the election of the members of the Board of Directors. May I request the Corporate Secretary to read the names of the incumbent members of the Board of Directors.
The incumbent members of the Board of Directors are Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gokongwei, Ms. Robina Gokongwei-Pe, Mr. Ian MacLeod, Mr. Samuel Sang-Yun Kim, and the independent directors are Mr. Antonio L. Go, Mr. Roberto R. Romulo, Mr. Rodolfo P. Ang, and Mr. Cirilo P. Noel.
Thank you. May we now have the list of nominees for election to the Board of Directors and the voting results.
Mr. Chairman, in accordance with the nomination process stated in the bylaws, the following have been nominated as members of the Board of Directors: Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gokongwei, Ms. Robina Gokongwei-Pe, Mr. Ian MacLeod, Mr. Samuel Sang-Hyun Kim, and as independent directors, Mr. Antonio L. Go, Mr. Roberto R. Romulo, Mr. Rodolfo P. Ang, and Mr. Cirilo P. Noel. There being no other nominations, the affirmative votes in favor of those nominated have been tabulated, and the following are hereby declared as the duly elected members of the Board of Directors of the corporation for the ensuing year until their successors shall have been elected and qualified. Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gohongwei, Ms. Robina Gohongwei Pe, Mr. Ian Macleod, Mr. Samuel Sang Yun Kim, and as independent directors, Mr. Antonio L. Go, Mr. Roberto R. Romulo, Mr. Rodolfo P. Ang, and Mr. Cirilo P. Noel.
Let us move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the appointment of the external auditor of the corporation. May I call on the corporate secretary to present the results of voting for this agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, the accounting firm of CSIP Gores Velayo and Company has been nominated as the external auditor of the corporation for the fiscal year 2021. After tabulation of the votes, the appointment of CSIP Gores Velayo and Company as external auditor of the corporation has been approved by shareholders representing 83.77% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation.
Thank you. The accounting firm of CSIP Gores Velayo and Company is hereby appointed as the external auditor of the corporation for the fiscal year 2021. Let us proceed to the next item in the agenda, which is the ratification of the acts of the Board of Directors and its committees, officers, and the management of corporation. May I call on the corporate secretary to present the results of voting for this agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, the list of the acts for ratification of the shareholders are shown right now on the screen. Copies of the said list have also been distributed to the shareholders present by showing the link and QR code to the said list on the screen prior to the meeting. After tabulation of the votes, we are pleased to report that shareholders representing 83.72% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation have confirmed and ratified the acts of the Board of Directors and its committees, officers, and the management of the corporation for the period beginning from the last annual shareholders meeting up to the current shareholders meeting as duly recorded in the corporate books and records of the corporation.
Thank you. The acts of the Board of Directors and its committees, officers, and management of the corporation for the period beginning from the last annual meeting of the shareholders up to the current meeting of the shareholders, as duly recorded in the books and records of the corporation, are hereby confirmed and ratified. We will now respond to questions which were earlier submitted by our shareholders via email. The questions will be answered by the President and CEO, Ms. Robina Gohongwei Pe.
We received two questions from our shareholders. The first question is, what are our expectations in the second half of 2021?
We are hoping to see better performance in the second half of the year compared to last year as we are coming from a lower base. However, this is highly dependent on the vaccination rollout in the country.
The second question is, what is Robinsons Retail doing in terms of its e-commerce pivot?
We are accelerating the growth of Go Robinsons as the main hub of our e-commerce platforms. We will onboard more business units this year.
Thank you. Are there any other matters to be taken up for consideration of the shareholders?
There is none, Mr. Chairman.
This ends the 2021 Annual Shareholders Meeting of Robinsons Retail Holdings, Inc. A link where a replay of the meeting may be viewed shall be made available at the website of the corporation. Thank you very much for joining us.